Hey everybody, Mo here, and today I'm bringing you guys a deck review, kind of like a deck guide, on the Yasuo deck that I won my skirmish with yesterday. So I went to a skirmish this weekend to get my bye for Las Vegas regional qualifiers, also just to play. We were playing for a box, winner got a whole box, so it was a fun time. I was able to sell the box for $250, but I brought Yasuo not for a meme or an ego or anything, but there is a $25,000 tournament at the end of January that I will be going to in Houston, the CCS Invitational first event. I'll be going to that. And there are still a few tournaments in set 1, so people are looking at set 2 already. Very fair. People aren't really looking at set 1 anymore, but there are still skirmishes to be played this month. There are skirmishes. I have a few, in the next couple weekends. I probably won't go to them because I'll be taking a break from Riftbound because I'll be traveling a lot, kind of like the very last weekend of January. Like I said, I'll be going to Houston for a 25K, and then I'll be going to Las Vegas for a tournament for the regional qualifier, and then who knows what tournaments between those two right after that. So I'm gonna take a little bit of a break, a little bit burnt out from traveling so much the last couple months. But anyways, wanted to get into this Yasuo deck. So this is the deck I played. I'm thinking of bringing Yasuo to the 25K, is what all that was supposed to say. I don't think set 1's necessarily as solved as people think it is. I haven't thought that in a while. I think purple went extremely underexplored. I actually spent most of my time in set 1 playing purple decks only and exploring purple decks, whether it was Misfortune Aurora or Annie or a little bit. My teammate played a little bit of like Sever aggro, but for the most, and then some Ari, which isn't a purple deck, but it plays like a purple deck. And so I like Yasuo. Yasuo was a deck that I was actually looking at for a little time period to play at Houston at the first regional qualifier, mostly because there's this really broken interaction before they changed the rules of getting a guaranteed point with Kayn 100% of the time that your opponent can't stop. But they changed it, so I was like, oh, the deck's doesn't do like anything like necessarily broken, and these other decks are more refined. Misfortune does Aurora, broken stuff, right? So I'm just gonna stick to those. But I think purple's really good. I think set 2 came out and people were, or hasn't come out yet, but we have all the cards. Some's being played in China, and I think China's finally figuring out that purple is good. Purple got a lot of really good cards right now, so purple got a lot of help in set 2, which it didn't really need. But purple was already really good in set 1. It's kind of doing the things that it does now in set 2. It just has to do it with different units or at a different style of attack, right? And Yasuo was very good. We saw Galewin's, I don't think he made day 2. Maybe he did make day 2, I'm not sure. I think he did. Either way, he got like best of with Yasuo. He's been a huge Yasuo advocate. I know Pochi Palm is someone that I've played a lot with online. If you know anything, if you're in the Yasuo circles, I guess, you know about Pochi. So he's helped me a lot learn about Yasuo. So I took a little bit of that knowledge, and then my friend and teammate Chris Allen played Yasuo in his skirmish yesterday, and I was like, hey, you're playing Yasuo, let me grab your Yasuo list. He played it at the PPG event, bubbled out of 2 top 8s with Yasuo, so I was like, hey, let me see your list. So this is the exact list. We both brought the exact same list to our skirmishes. Because I don't have a lot of knowledge and a lot of reps on playing the Yasuo deck, I have a lot of playing into it, and I know like what it does, but I haven't actually played it. I just took his deck, and I usually do that when I'm learning a deck or wanting to figure out something like the intricacies, is I just take the decks before changing them at all, and I just play what's given to me, and then after I get enough reps in or enough ideas, then I actually implement the changes. I had changes for the list going into the tournament, but I didn't want to mess anything up or make any changes to it the day of, so I figured I'd play it now, make some changes, make this video for you guys to go over the list that I played, and then the newer list. And then so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go really in depth here. I'm going to go over every single card, what its purpose is, what it does, what order to choose battlefields, all that stuff. So make sure you subscribe if you enjoy this type of in-depth content. It might be a little bit longer one. My deck guides in the past have been around an hour long. So if you enjoy this stuff, make sure to check it out. Go check out my Metafy as well, because I have written deck guides over there for like sideboard guides and a whole bunch of stuff like that that I'll post from my this Yasuo deck on the updated version for set 1, and this is a set 1 list. I want everyone to know that. Obviously, if you clicked on for a set 2 list, this is just for set 1 for skirmishes. Set 2, things will obviously change and be different. I'm working on set 2 content right now, but again, if you have skirmishes coming up, or you just want to style on people with Yasuo at your Nexus Nights while it's set 1 or something, here you go. Yeah, so let's get into it. The first thing we'll start with is the rune count is 6-6 split. I think it's perfectly fine. I think most decks will probably be 6-6 splits. Some will be like 7-5 splits, but I think 6-6 is perfectly fine. Power distribution, we're 11-5, but the 11 is like mostly sideboard anyways from like the rebukes. And then it's like it's your top end where you can spend double power cost because you're not actually deramping yourself. You don't spend any power cost until you get to this like 7-8 number of runes, and then you can spend 2 a turn with your like mind splitters, your play up 2 power cost cards, your rebukes in the late game, wind wall in the late game, anything like that, right? So the power curve's kind of whatever. You just need 6 and 6. You split it down the middle of like your one ofs. You play 3 purple, 3 green. I'm colorblind. 3 purple, 3 green for your early game power cost. So it's going to be your like 2-5s and your charm, and it's going to be your ride the wind and your Razas, which again is not really your early game card, but all your early game spells. Those are the things you really want to gear your energy towards when you're trying to decide if you're 7-5 or not. And because I have very few cards that actually require power early on, 6-6 is perfectly fine. Battlefield choices. I guess I should go over Yasuo. If you don't know what Yasuo does, he's green purple, 2 energy, tap him, move a friendly unit from to or from your base. Basically, you give something accelerate without having to pay a power cost. So you just play a unit, pay 2 energy, tap him, and then you can move a unit up immediately when it comes into play. Or you can move a unit up, conquer, and then move him back with Yasuo to keep it safe so it doesn't die to any of these like battlefield specific board wipes, or removal, which is really good. And it also, if you're ahead in point tempo, it's really annoying for your opponent because you move a unit up, conquer, move your unit back, and if they don't have base removal, or if your unit's big enough to get over top of theirs, it's just a bitch of a time to deal with. Excuse my language. Battlefield choices. So 2 of these make a whole lot of sense. So we're on Zon Warrens for game 1. We do play Scrap Heaps in our deck. So we have Scrap Heaps game 1. We're doing the same thing Andy does, which is something that I was doing a long time ago, which was play the Scrap Heaps game 1 because you have Zon Warrens, and then you board out the Scrap Heaps in after game 1 because they're a lot less good and a lot less consistent without the Zon Warrens in play. So you open with Zon Warrens game 1 every time, unless you're against like an Annie that you know they're going to play Zon Warrens in game 1. So if they're playing Zon Warrens in game 1, then I actually open with Targon's Peak. But in every other case scenario where it's not a Scrap Heap Zon Warrens mirror match for game 1, I open Zon Warrens game 1. Except for the Aurora match, but Aurora match I actually open with Targon's Peak because basically Zon Warrens is your strongest game. It's your strongest like card digging through your deck. So you're going to see most of your deck. You're going to see whatever cards you want. So what I do against Aurora, because against Aurora specifically, you're going to need to see your sideboard cards. You're going to need to see the Rebukes. You're going to need to see the Adaptatrons. You're going to need to see like the Mind Splitters. Is because game 1 you don't have all of these sideboard cards. You don't have like the Adaptatron, the Rebukes in there, and in game 1 you're pretty alright as long as you have some amount of pump spells and don't let them stop you, especially if they don't open up on Aspirant's Climb. Then a lot of people don't open on Aspirant's Climb. You just have this really powerful deck anyways because you're aggressive, you're really fast, you're scoring maximum points on them, and you're basically telling them, hey dude, you cannot stumble. I have Defy for your Catalyst. If you can hold open one and defy a Catalyst, they just like lose the game because you're just going to be way too fast for them. And you don't really need, and if you're playing Targon's Peak, then you can almost always have that Defy up on turn 2 because you just conquer the Targon's Peak. It was the idea, and still fully develop, have the energy for the Defies. And that is just something that Aurora can't really deal with. And then in post board, whenever they don't really bring a whole lot into you, but what you do is you get to bring in your Adaptatron, your Rebuke, sometimes multiple Adaptatrons, whatever. You bring in your sideboard cards, and then now you get to play your Zon Warrens with your Scrap Heaps. And this is my going second option with Zon Warrens. With Zon Warrens, Scrap Heap options, try and dig through your deck as much as possible, find those Adaptatrons, find the Mind Splitters to rip the Auroras away, find the Rebukes, whatever it is, right? And be able to get there. Next is, we'll go over Windswept Hillock next. I'll tell you why in a second. So Windswept Hillock is really powerful, and I've actually been doing it going first. I heard that people do Windswept Hillock going second, and the logic is usually like you can play a, what is his name? You can play the 3-drop. I always call him River Shaper, the Wielder of Water. Funny story, I wrote River Shaper on my deck list, and then my I always have someone go over my deck list with me just to double check to make sure I don't get like a stupid game loss for the stupidest of reasons, because I think filling out deck lists in paper is stupid. And they were like, what is a river shaper? And I was like, oh, so I would have got a game loss for that. But anyways, the idea is you put Wielder of Water into play on turn 1, and then turn 2 you have 5 energy to be able to like push it up with Yasuo, have 3 energy left for spells, gank him over, he attacks for 4 on both ends. And that's going to be really hard for any opponent to deal with on turn 1. Like, no turn 1 2-drop is going to be able to sustain or like live through 4 might attacking, so you get to do both, you get to conquer both. I like it going first for kind of similar reasons of I can just play a 2-drop on turn 1, pass, and then on turn 2 I can just move up my guy with Yasuo. You know, you untap, you have 4 energy, spend 2 of it to move your guy up with Yasuo, move it on to the Windswamp Tillock, get a point, gank it over, get 2 points, and you just start the game with 2 points. With the last 2 runes, you can either develop another unit, unless you're against Kai'Sa, but if you're not against Kai'Sa or like a Falling Star deck, you just develop a second unit, and you don't necessarily care if that first unit dies or gets, you know, attacked over top of, because you're just immediately going to do the same thing next turn, except you're going to have 6 runes, so you can just move your unit up, your 2-drop up to Hillock with Yasuo ability, get a point, maybe buff it up with like an On Guard or a, you know, a Pump Spell, Discipline, anything like that. Maybe you have Mask of Momentum in play or Mask of Foresight in play. Maybe you have a combat trick, whatever, move it over, score another 2 points, and you're just on this like even point cadence, which is super nice. Also, alternatively, because you're at 6 runes, what you can do now is just move the 2-drop up normally to the Windswept Tillock, and then now you can still just play your Wielder of Water if it's in your hand. So you can just play Wielder of Water and accelerate it out with your Yasuo ability and still attack over top of any 2-might unit that your opponent plays. And you're kind of in the same spot, really, except you get 1 extra energy to maybe, again, have that Defy if you need it, have a Gust, have your On Guard, and it's actually even more safe against if you're an opponent that has like combat tricks or something, right? So that's why I like Windswept Tillock going first post board in any game, except for the ones that we talked about with the Zon Warrens. And then the last battlefield is Targon's Peak, and this is the battlefield that I changed, and it's kind of awkward because people that play Targon's Peak, you want to play it going first, so I think that's the main reason why people were playing Windswept Tillock going second as well. It's like, yes, it's cool with the River Shaper, but realistically, it's because you play Targon's Peak, and you kind of force yourself to go first on Targon's Peak. If the opponent gets to go first on Targon's Peak, conquer it, have 2 up, and just like stop you from conquering the very first turn, you're in a lot of trouble, and it's just going to be hard. It's going to be hard to kind of come back from that tempo loss a lot of the time, where they got to fully develop and have 2 up. So I played it going second. I just wasn't really a fan of Targon's Peak in general, so I changed it to Dreaming Tree. We'll get to that when we go over the new deck, but that is the idea behind Targon's Peak, is if you do play this battlefield loadout exactly, I would go first on Targon's Peak and then second on Windswept Hillock, simply because going second on Targon's Peak feels really bad. It feels really, really not good into these decks that have a lot of spells. Now we'll get into the actual main deck. Yasuo, Remorseful Green. Yasuo is our chosen champion. Very simple. He's good. He's a great unit. He's one of the best ways that you can deal with big unit decks like the Sets, the Yis, the Auroras, where you just play Yasuo, move him up. You're at 8 runes because you get to 8 very easily in this deck. One thing you notice is this deck doesn't use power at all in the early game, or you can choose to not use power at all in the early game, and you just ramp up to your 6 and 8 and 9 runes very easily. So it's very often that you just get to play Yasuo, move him up immediately for 8 runes. He either kills something for free, like he'll just kill a Darius, he'll kill a Kai'Sa and then conquer, or if it's a really big unit, like if it is a Master Yi unit, if it is an Aurora unit, you can just simply play him out there to trade 1-for-1 with any unit in the game, really, as long as it's 12 might or less, because the ability will go off where he'll deal 6 damage with his ability, and then combat damage will happen where he'll deal 6 might because of 6 damage because of his might. And then now you can move in with your second unit, and because Yasuo cleared out a spot, it's now an open battlefield. You can move in, get your last point, and that's very impactful. I tried purple Yasuo like really early on with some like gimmicky stuff, but I thought of it like maybe as a sideboard card, even as a way to steal games into like Kai'Sa, where you can get your first few points, but then maybe you stall out around like the 5 or 6 point area, and it's hard to get the last couple points, or if you fall behind in point tempo, it can be difficult. So I tried purple Yasuo like in the sideboard or just in general. And all in all, Green Yasuo is just too good. It's just a very strong card. He's very expensive and he's slow, but because Yasuo, the legend, gives accelerate to any of your units, coming in accelerated for 6 might, effectively 12 damage, is strong enough to make him your chosen champion. Next is Defy. So we're on 2 Defy. Ratios, I'll explain all of these that aren't 3-ofs. Defy is a very good card when it's good, and then it's a card that just sits in your hand and does literally nothing when it's not good. There is a game where I played into Master Yi in round 1 of my skirmish, and I had 2 Defies in my hand, and I didn't get rid of them because they played 0 spells so far into the game. We're on like turn 3, I think, and they didn't play any spells. They didn't play a Discipline, they didn't play their own Defy, they didn't play, they were playing like a tempo aggro version, like they didn't play their own guards yet, they didn't play anything. So I was like, oh, I'll hold on to 2 Defies because I'll want to defy a spell eventually. They will have a Defy, and then I get to defy that Defy. I'll win the combat, the like spell magic war, right? The counter magic war. They just didn't play a spell the whole game. I was just minus 2 cards in my hand the whole game. And then by the time they drew a spell to play, they then drew a Defy, and I was just like bottlenecked on my mana and couldn't really do both. And it was just like super awkward. Plus you get to a spot where you play Mind Splitter and just take cards out of their hands anyways. But Defy is just a card where it's really good early game, and then you don't really want to see more than 1 copy of it in most matchups. Any non-green matchup, 1 Defy is probably good enough. And if you see it super late into the game, it's a lot less impactful because the later into the game you get, the more often people are just playing big-ass units, and they play these really big units, and your Defy does nothing. 3-stack deck, best purple card in the game, one of the best cards in the game in general right now in set 1. Look at the top 3, put 1 into your hand. It fills your trash really quickly for your Razas. It's a 1-mana spell, and it just helps you dig for your specific cards. You're playing a toolbox sort of deck, especially once you're post-board, so being able to just dig for exactly what you need off of the stack deck is nice. Saying, oh, okay, I can go find my 1 of Gust because I'm against an aggro deck in game 1. Cool, find it. Oh, have some time, I need to find the scrap heap so I can just draw and refill my deck, or refill my trash, draw a bunch of cards because I'm on Zon Warrens and stuff. I'll grab the scrap heap, discard it, draw a bunch of cards, do stuff. Oh, I need mask, blah, blah, blah. It just finds you what you need. Looking at 3 cards is insane, and then drawing 1, not having a power cost and only costing 1 energy, really easy to slot this in on any turn. And yeah, I think it's stack deck, right? 1 Gust. Gust, most of the time, I've been using as a save spell. I didn't play against any Annies in my skirmish run. There were a couple, but I just didn't hit them, and then they ended up losing out to Kaisas. So it just says return unit battlefield with 3 or less might to your or to the owner's hand. I tried it against, I drew it into the aggro Yasuo guy, or the aggro Yi guy, like the tempo Yi, but they just buffed their unit, so it felt bad. And then after that, I just played into Kaisas and Aurora, so I just used it as a way to save my unit. I did do a very cool thing where my Kaisa opponent had a Noxus Hopeful and a Student in play, and I just had a Traveling Merchant in play on a battlefield. It's actually on their Dreaming Tree, and they went to, I already got a lot of value out. This was like turn 3 or so, and I had like 4 or 5 mana up, and it was Dreaming Tree, so they couldn't really just send in their Noxus Hopeful into my unit and hope it won. So they just decided to go ahead and Falling Star it to deal 6 to guarantee it kind of dies, or I have to spend so many resources to keep it alive that I effectively like 3-for-1 myself and then don't have a unit in play. And whenever they did that, I just gusted the Poro back to my hand while the Falling Star was on the stack. And because they did that, I drew a card because it was Dreaming Tree. The unit went back into my hand. Then I let the Falling Star resolve, and they had to choose where the 2 triggers went. So they ended up killing their Student and then dealing 3 damage to their Hopeful. If the Hopeful was like -1 might, then I if it was like just another 2-drop, for example, like if it was 2 students, then they would have just simply killed off both of their students, or they could have just killed 1 student. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. Pretty crazy stuff, so that's really nice, but it's mostly just a save spell. I would like some in the sideboard for the aggro matchups like Annie to be able to stall them out and kind of keep up on the tempo race. Going second, it's really good because you can play a 2-drop on turn 1 and still have Gust mana up on turn on that turn 1 to stop them from conquering a point is really important. So in the newer version, I did put 2 Gust on the sideboard. But yeah, that's why I'm only on 1 Gust. If you're not in like exactly the Annie matchup, Gust is dead in a lot of matchups, so going down to 1, I kind of like. On guard at 3, I mean, it's just very simple, 1 mana plus 2. You're playing very few units on board. Usually in my games, I had 1 to 2 units in play at a time, especially against Kaisa. The only time I like actually flooded the board and emptied out my hand with units was when I was against Master Yi and Aurora. Anytime I'm against Kaisa, I just usually only have like 1 unit in play at a time, maybe 2 if my hand is just full of units, so I'm okay if they get Falling Starred. And being able to just keep anything alive is nice. Obviously, the 1 extra energy to pump your Yasuo to an 8 now shoots anything, just about anything in the meta right now for 8, before he even has to deal the 8 damage himself, which is nice. And yeah, just simple, efficient combat trick. 1 Charm. I didn't like Charm. Then I liked Charm enough to keep it in. The issue with Charm is that in this version, your units are small. Usually you're using Charm to like steal the last point, it feels like. Because you just charm their unit back and then move your unit up to score. It doesn't feel good, but I did end up appreciating Charm and learned how to use it a little bit better throughout the skirmish. What I learned is that if your opponent has 2 units, or units on both battlefields, and you're playing Yasuo, because this list doesn't have any like natural accelerate in it, you can't actually push up to both battlefields in a turn. You kind of have to choose one because you're also only on 1 Ride the Wind. So I used Ride the Wind and Charm as cards to be able to, not really Ride the Wind, but mostly Charm, as a card to be able to, come back from that kind of board deficit or point tempo deficit. And I would try and pair it with the turn that I would buff up my unit. So what I would do is I would get in a place where I would go like, okay, I have like a 2-might unit, maybe I have a Wielder of Water in play. And so it's going to attack in for a 4. I'll buff it up with On Guard, make it a 6. Okay, I killed your unit for 6. Now I'm going to charm in your other unit while my Wielder of Water is still buffed and be able to kind of kill 2 units. So I spent 2 cards to kill 2 units, and that feels fine. Doesn't feel great. I boarded out Charm a lot. I boarded it out against Kaisa every time, and I will still board it out against Kaisa. Charm's probably the first card I would cut. I actually think I did cut it in the next deck. Yeah, I did end up cutting it for an Accelerate card. But that's what I would do. It's essentially a way to like deal with 2 boards or both battlefields in 1 turn because I didn't have Accelerate. 2 Scrap Heaps. Scrap Heaps is really interesting. You only have a 39 card deck, so you don't actually have a whole lot of room. I do still only have 2 Scrap Heaps in my other version, even though Scrap Heap is really good. If you don't have basically Traveling Merchant out, or if you're not just like, don't have it out exactly when you're conquering Zon Warrens, it gets really rough. And you do have the stack decks to try and dig into them. So in game 1, I'll dig into it a lot, really, and try and go for that. But you don't necessarily need stack deck because you don't need card draw in this deck because your cards are just good. And most of the time your cards are either cycling themselves anyways, or they're getting efficient like 2-to-1 trades, so you can kind of run your opponent out of cards. You don't have to get more cards for that. And I think card draw in Riftbound is an extremely misunderstood concept. I'm just going to make an entire video on it. But basically, having 7 cards in your hand does no good if you're dying, is the thing I've learned about card draw in Riftbound. So I think 2 is really good. I actually think 2, maybe even in Annie, is good. I don't even think you need 3 in Annie, outside of the fact that like maybe you just want 3 in Annie. But because we are on also a Dreaming Tree, you just have a lot of draw in your other turns. You just don't need to draw into a trillion things. A lot of your stuff cantrips anyways. So I think 2 is fine. It also fits with the sideboard plan at the time. I'm still on 2. If I could fit in a 3rd, maybe I do, but I just don't need it. I never really found myself needing it. 1 Mask of Foresight. I think this was the biggest misplay, and I kind of knew it. When I was testing for Houston early in set 1, and we were testing Ahri, and Ahri was a deck that my team was considering taking to Houston, we learned that Mask of Foresight, is broken. This card is really, really, really good. It's probably the most underrated card in all of set 1. Anytime you pair it with Accelerate cards especially, it's very strong. The biggest thing is we paired it with Sprite Mother because we were playing Ahri, right? So you pair it with Sprite Mother, and what you get to do with that is play a Sprite Mother, attack in for 4 because your Sprite, gets +1 from the buff of Mask. 4 is an amazing breakpoint right now. And then on top of that, it will defend for 5 if you're an Ari, because it gets +1 from the mask. Ari gives something -1, so it's effectively defending for 5. And then even if they get over it, if they use a spell, whatever, you just do it again because you have the Sprite Mom in the back, right? Well, your entire Yasuo deck is Accelerate because all of your units have Accelerate. So Mask of Foresight just gets value on every single unit you play, and it helps with one of the issues of just like not really being able to defend. And because you can't defend, you're either forced into using 2 energy on your Yasuo Legend to protect your unit every turn, or you're just accepting the fact that the opponent's going to get a point. You're playing this game where you score 2 a turn, they score 2 a turn, you score 2 a turn, and you have to either hope to break that cycle if you're behind, which can be difficult and usually how the deck lost, or if you're ahead, you kind of have to figure out a way to not lose. And if your opponent just kind of stacks up 8 might worth of units in the base, it can be kind of hard to not lose. It's kind of hard to deal with that when all but like 2 of your units are 2 might, right? You only play 2 units that have an actual might number behind them. And yes, you have your purple combat tricks, but against like if they just develop a Darius in the back line and they go, okay, cool, move Darius up for 5 into your 2, what do? You can't fight or flight him back because they just play 2 cards, he untaps, comes in for 7, right? That's not good. They have Accelerate units, same thing. If they can give ganking with Misfortune or just have a Misfortune that can untap something, not good. They have Ride the Wind to be able to untap and move stuff up, not good. So Mask of Foresight gives you a lot of tempo in the early game by making it hard for your opponent to actually get over your unit, but also making it easier for you to attack in and not actually have to expend your combat tricks when you might not want to or might not, need to. It also pairs really well with Green Yasuo. Just having it in play lets you not have to have extra energy open for a pump spell, so you can just tempo out, like on curve, 8 runes, play Yasuo, move it up with Yasuo ability, and swing in. And you don't have to have the extra energy for something like an Unguard available because you'll have the extra pump from Mask of Momentum. Another thing that's really good with Mask of Momentum is Teemo, because you can hide Teemo on a battlefield with 1 unit. Because Mask of Momentum is a trigger, not a static ability like Master Yi's ability, you will be defending with 1 unit, so your unit defends alone. It'll get the Mask of Foresight trigger, it'll get the +1 might. After that ability, or that triggered ability resolves, that's it. It resolves. Your unit just has 1 might for the turn. You can't like undo that or take it out, right? So you let that resolve, and then you get to play your Teemo from Hidden, and you just get an extra, like 4 might from there, and you got the 1 might from the Mask of Foresight, or however much might from your Mask of Foresights. Mask of Foresight is also very good into Watcher, or any, I say like most might reduction, but really it's just Watcher. Because you play things with shield, like you have Wielder of Water, which doesn't really have shield 2, but it basically has shield 2 when defending, and Stalwart Pora, which has shield 1 when defending. If your opponent plays a Watcher, it moves both of these units down to just 1 might, but as soon as they move into attack, these units get big, right? They get shield 2, so this guy goes to a 3. If you have a mask out, it goes to a 4. Poro goes to a 2 because of shield, goes to a 3 because of mask, and now all of a sudden your units are getting just like free stats, and you can pump it up to be able to be bigger than whatever your opponent's trying to do. Another really good breakpoint is Mind Splitter coming in for 8 is really big. It beats over a Darius, it defends Darius, it beats over a Watcher. Being at an 8 means that Watcher will come in for 7 to 5, and being 7 versus 5, well, now you just need a pump spell to trade, which is great. You need 2 pump spells to win even, which is amazing. So this Mask of Foresight really makes a difference, and a lot of breakpoints like that. Same with Raza defending for 7. So I had a point where my opponent attacked in with a Darius, and just like had to trade Darius for Raza to stop me from winning the game because they didn't have a way to remove it. I was at 7 points. And it's a lot of breakpoints like that. In the newer version, I've added in a Tasty Faithfolk, and it's the same idea as Raza, where it now will attack and defend for 7. So it trades with the Darius, which is really good. If you have 2 out, it'll trade with like a Dead Bloom even. And then on top of that, you get the Death Rattle or the Death Knell effect and get all of that value on top of it. So Mask of Foresight only being a 1 is the biggest misplay. I think it should very much be a 3. It's like one of, if not legitimately the best card in the whole deck. And it makes a lot of your problems go away. It's also really good into Kaisa because it lets you develop and play cards without having to overextend into a Falling Star. So if you play a unit on turn 1, move it up, Mask of Foresight, and pass. That's really good. You developed your board, you got Mask of Foresight, your unit will be harder to swing into, you still have energy up for pump spells on top of the Mask of Foresight, right? Stuff like that is very strong, whereas if you don't have this and you just have to develop another 2-drop, that feels bad because you get Falling Star and it sucks. If you pass and then you don't have enough pump spells, you lose your unit, and now you have to develop a unit and swing it up next turn. It just helps a lot of in development cases. It's kind of like a pseudo 2-drop of being able to have a turn 1 play, consistently. Traveling Merchant is a 3, Stalwart Porter a 3. These are just very good 2-drops. Traveling Merchant loots through your entire deck. It's something that can discard a scrap heap. It fills your graveyard, or it fills your trash really quickly for your Raza to be a free card. It can dig you into whatever you need. If you have too many units, you discard them to find spells. If you have too many spells, you discard them to find units. Stalwart Porter is just a very solid 2-drop, defense for 3. It's an above rate 2 cost unit if your opponent has to attack into it. Again, with a Mask in play, defense for 4 now, so it actually beats or trades with things like a Kaisa and a Noxus Hopeful, which is really big. 1, Ride the Wind. Ride the Wind is just a cute trick to get extra points that a lot of people aren't really playing around. They either play around it too much and say like, oh, it's a purple deck, it must be playing Ride the Wind, and they do like some dumb stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense, or they don't play around it at all and it just steals a point or two sometimes and like wins you the game. It speeds up the game by an entire turn when they weren't expecting it, and it's a really big play. Sometimes if your opponent attacks in incorrectly, you can Ride the Wind a unit over. It's kind of just like a third copy of Tide Turner, and I like it more than Tide Turner because it's more flexible. So that's why it's in here with only 2 Tide Turners. Triple Discipline, just very stock standard, really good pump spell in set 1, probably the best pump spell in set 1. Give a unit +2 might, replaces itself. Clockwork Keeper is a card that I hate. I really don't like Clockwork Keeper. I don't think it's a good card at all. Not just in this deck. I just don't think Clockwork Keeper is a good card. I understand why some people play it. Some people play it because they think it's a 2-drop on turn 2, but then in the late game, my 2-drop draws me a card. The issue is that paying a power in this deck is really bad. You never really want to pay the power to draw a card, and oftentimes that actually baits you into not being able to do the cool end game stuff you want. When you're on like 6 runes or 5 runes, it's like turn 3, and you're like, okay, well, it's turn 3, I'll just play my 2-drop and draw a card, that's fine. Well, now it's going to take you off a rune that could really mess up your rune count in like 2 turns that you weren't really thinking about, or you don't know exactly what the board state will look like in 2 turns, and you could really use that energy. So I don't like using it in those cases. It's only good if you're in like this weird top deck grindy mode, and that just doesn't really happen with this deck. You either win while having cards in your hand, or you lose while having cards in your hand. You don't really get in the spot where you just have like nothing to play, no units, no whatever, and like you can still win the game. If you're in that spot, you're just like losing the game anyways, even if you draw a card, because it costs 2 energy. You're gonna like play Clockwork Keeper. The only thing you can really draw into that matters is like a Raza maybe at that point, but anything else you just like can't play, or it's gonna be too small, and you're just in a not good spot overall. So I don't think that's a real excuse to play it either. I put 2 Teemos in over it because Teemo is a very solid card at all stages of the game. If you are able to hold, you can hide Teemo, have him defend for 4. It's good into Kaisa because if they shoot the guy on a battlefield either with like a Falling Star or some sort of spell, then you can play Teemo to flip it. You still get to control the battlefield, and now you're defending for 4, which is a really good number because 4 lets you trade with a Kaisa, trade with a Noxus Hopeful, anything like that. If you have the Mask out, again, it's a 5 now. And then in the late game, it's just a 2 energy 4 might unit, which is super, super high efficiency. So it can be really good at being able to like win or come up with some sort of like crazy attack that your opponent's not really planning for. It's just having like a 4 energy 4 might unit come out at it is really nice. Next is Fight or Flight. So 2 copies of Fight or Flight. It's mostly to save your units or push back 1 unit of theirs. That's what the card does. You can hide it sometimes. I rarely ever hide cards in this deck. I'll be completely honest with you. The only times I ever hide cards in this deck is if it's against like exactly Kaisa, and I have enough runes, and I've determined like, okay, I know exactly what runes and how my turns are going to look for the next 2 turns at least, so I know I won't need this rune. I can hide the card. And if it's on like a Dreaming Tree, so you can, it refills itself. And you need to save the unit specifically from a spell. If it's just during combat, you can just spend the 2 energy to push it back to your base. Either theirs back to their base, so you get the hold point, or yours back to your base, so your unit doesn't die. It's not in danger anymore. And then again, if it's on Dreaming Tree, you can even draw a card. But it's also just really good in the green, like really big Yasuo or Master Yi matchups, and in those I'll hide it because by the time they're playing the really big cards that are scary, whether they have like an Aurora out or they have their like Dead Bloom energy in hand, you want to be able to like fight or flight their unit back and then have another trick on top of it in case they have like a defy or basically just like a defy of their own. But hiding fight or flight is usually really rough because most of the time in decks like that, like they'll move up, conquer, and then they charm your unit, and it's like, what good does fight or flight do into a charm? Feels bad. If they just attack in with multiple units, then it can feel kind of bad because you push your unit back anyways, but you pay to power, you kind of wasted energy sometimes. So I think 2 is a very good number. If you don't have flashes, you can play 3 fight or flights, but because I have flashes, I'll be able to play, these in the Kaisa matchup. So if I ever need save spells, I could just have flash in my hand instead of hiding a fight or flight, and that feels much better. 2 Tide Turners, it's just a very strong way to draw more cards with your Traveling Merchant. It's a strong way to have a combat trick of like bring a 7 might unit over. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll stack one battlefield with like a Mind Splitter will be on the right battlefield. The left battlefield will have some like 2 might unit and a Tide Turner. The opponent goes, okay, well I can't beat Mind Splitter because it's too big. Let me attack into the smaller battlefield. And what you do then is you just flip the Tide Turner, bring the Mind Splitter over, and then now you've killed their unit because the Mind Splitter's there that they've already determined is too big. Your other unit moved to the other side, which can be safe if they have no more units to attack in with or no more tricks or anything. And now you're defending for 9 into something. You'll lose your Tide Turner, but you'll at least get to hold it with the Mind Splitter, and it feels really good. It's a way if you played a unit to your base, like let's say maybe you don't have Yasuo ability, or you don't want to like overstack into a battlefield too early, then you can play a unit in your base, push it up with Tide Turner, swap places, and it could be a nice combat trick there as well. 1 Rebuke in the main, I didn't love this card. Maybe it's because I didn't play enough against enough Annies, but I did play into 2 big unit decks. Like I played into a Ramp Yi, and I played into a MF Aurora. And even in those matches, the main board Rebuke just like didn't particularly matter. Between me being able to just push their units back, in most decks that you'll want Rebuke against, you're kind of just fast enough for it to not matter in game 1 before they have their tech cards for you. And the big thing is it can't be defied, which is really nice, but you are a green deck, so you can defy like their defy or do whatever yourself or just play a second trick. So I was not really impressed with the 1 of main deck Rebuke. Again, maybe it's because I didn't play against enough Annies to love it, but I think maybe our fight or flights are probably just good enough most of the time. And I think our Rebukes can get us there. Also, our defy to just like defy their Ride the Wind is going to be good enough most of the time. So I think you have enough tricks into Annie to stop you from just dying to Vi Ride the Wind. Whereas in the Annie mirror match, you kind of need the 1 Rebuke in the main to have a chance against like Master Yi high rolls and the Vi Ride the Wind from the mirror because you don't have access to defy. But because you have access to defy, it changes a little bit of dynamics. 1 of Zhonya's is another card I was not impressed with at all. What units am I saving? I'm not saving any of these units. These units suck. Again, I don't want to hide it because it costs a power. If I'm hiding it, it means that I'm going to be saving like some shitter 2 might unit most of the time anyways. And just playing it for 2 energy doesn't feel good because for 85 to 90% of the game, all the units I played are little 2 might units. So the only units in play and in on a battlefield are 2 might, and I don't want to waste a Zhonya's on that unit. I want Zhonya's to keep my like Yasuo alive. I want Zhonya's to keep my like big dudes alive. But by the time you're in that stage of the game, it's like I don't really want to spend another power because I probably spent like 2 power on Mind Splitter, moved it up, and then I have to spend another power on Zhonya's is really awkward because that takes me off of 9 mana. It puts me to 8. So now I can't repeat the same play of like Mind Splitter, move it up. I can't do like Yasuo plus on guard, move it up. Yasuo defy, move it up. You just lose out on runes. Anytime you have to recycle 3 runes in a turn, it just gets really awkward. And playing it out raw didn't feel good because most of my units are just small and I don't care about them. Wielder of Water is an extremely efficient, cheap unit. It's just a 3 energy 4. When it has Accelerate, it's very good. The opponent can't really play around it, but the big thing this lets you do with Wielder of Water is you can move it up to attack for 4. And then the downside, why Wielder of Water isn't like the best thing ever, why you don't see Yeez playing it, is because it's only a 2 might unit outside of combat, meaning that your Kaisa opponent can just shoot it with like a hex ray on their turn, or shoot it with a I can't think of the name, a Void Seeker for 4, and then now you can't even like pump it out of safe range. Like a Discipline makes it 4, so it just trades. Same with On Guard makes it trade. You just get like 2 for 1, then it doesn't feel good, or 2 for 0 because it replaces itself. So what it lets you do is you get to Wielder of Water, attack in for 4, get your point, and then you just move it back with your Yasuo Legend to keep it safe, and then now you have a 4-might attacker on the next turn. And a lot of aggro decks are going to have a lot of trouble dealing with that, because they're not going to be able to do things like Darius, accelerate into it, beat it, be happy, force you to deal with it on the back end. They're not going to be able to do like Kai'Sa Cleave. You lose a lot of cleave value. You lose assault value. And that's going to be the biggest reason that Wielder of Water is very good. Same with like I said, people going second with Windsaw Tillock. I get it. You play a Wielder of Water on turn 1. You move Wielder of Water up to the Hillock with Yasuo ability on turn 2. If they did have a unit there, you killed it, then you gank over. If they don't, you just get the point there, and then you gank over anyways for 4, and then I don't think there's like a single 2-cost card that can do that. Maybe like exactly Stalwart, Poro, and Ahri can do that, but you have 3 extra mana or 3 extra energy that you can use on combat tricks and stuff, so it gets kind of dicey. 3 Mind Splitter at the top end is very good. This is mostly how you beat Aurora. This is how you beat Kai'Sa. It's how you beat a lot of the big unit decks anyways, which is also why I don't think you need the main deck Rebuke, is because you can very easily just go turn 3 going second. Cool, you didn't spend any energy on turns 1 and 2, so turn 3 you just play Mind Splitter. There you go. It's that easy. You take an Aurora out of their hand. You take their Dead Bloom out of their hand. You take their White Flame. You take their card draw. You take their Vi. You take their Darius. You take like their Watcher. You take like their Time Warp or something, or their Acathian Rain, so they can't just murk your Mind Splitter back. The card is just solid. It's one of the best purple cards again. And again, I think purple just went super underexplored. I'd even consider playing Mind Splitter in my Annie deck in set 1 because that's how strong this card is, especially if you're a deck that can get to this 7 energy breakpoint very easily without spending any power, which again, this deck does. It doesn't spend any power early, so you get to 7 really easily. You even get to 9 really easily, so those are the games where you just get to go, okay, play Mind Splitter. You don't have any combat tricks to punish me. Move my Mind Splitter up with Yasuo Legend, and now you do have a really big attacking unit. Another card I used to play in Yasuo was White Flame Protector for the same reason. You can White Flame Protector a little guy, and then have him attack in, and then use your 2 energy from Yasuo to move the White Flame Protector up, and now you've attacked in for like 10 on one battlefield and then 8 on the other battlefield because White Flame. Or you can target itself with White Flame and then push it up with Yasuo, and now you just swung in for 16 somewhere, right? And that's going to be a really big deal. So I like White Flame Protector. That is a card I'd consider playing maybe over the Tasty Feyfolk in the newer version, but Tasty has just a lot of other applications. Mainly they're in there to be an accelerate card that's hard for Kai'Sa to deal with, because if Kai'Sa wants to deal with a 6-might card, it's not easy, and then whenever they do that, you just get to draw a card that replaces itself. You ramp 2 runes to get, even bigger. It feels good. And then 2 Raza at the end of the day. This is just going to be most of the time I played it for 0 energy, or I played it for 3 energy once, and then I played it for 0 energy another time, and it's just like a 0 energy, 1 power, 6-might unit that you accelerate up with Yasuo, and it's hard for people to deal with. It is a big body, so once you pair this big body with more pump spells or with save spells, it just gets really hard to deal with. Again, you pair it with Mask of Foresight even, and now it's trading with the Darius, which is disgusting. So that's why the Raza's in here. It's just a nice, efficient way to play out multiple units and play out a big unit that can be difficult for a lot of decks to deal with. Sideboard for this event was fine. I actually really like the sideboard. I like the one of Windwall and the one of Adaptatron. I like having Adaptatron for Aurora. I don't think you need it. I think you can play like 3 Adaptatron and just literally never lose to Aurora, because they do not have a good answer for Adaptatron in Yasuo. None of their tricks work. The only thing they can do is challenge it, basically. And even challenge then gets like hit by a Defy, but to challenge it, you have to have a unit out before you are playing Aurora anyways, which means you're probably like, you did something where you played Misfortune, played a challenge, that cost you 2 runes, so like, you're probably not going to be on Aurora next turn anyways, and that's kind of awkward. But all their other stuff doesn't work. If they just gust it, you say, okay, cool, replay it, accelerate it with Yasuo, they push it back, you push it up with Yasuo, You have pump spells to play around Gust anyways. You have Rebuke is like the only actual answer they have. But again, if they Rebuke it to your hand, you just replay it and accelerate it out anyways. And it's just, there isn't a good answer, but I don't think you really need it. I think it's just a good card to bring in once you take out your scrap heaps like in game 2 or whatever. It's also like you take out Gust because Gust doesn't do anything against them. Charm doesn't do anything against them. So you take out Gust and Charm, you bring in Rebuke, Adaptatron, bring in one more Rebuke by taking out like, I don't know, some other like random card. Like I don't think the one of Mask really did anything. Multiples of Mask help a lot. One of Mask didn't do anything really, so I took that out as well, I believe. So, or I think I took out the Zhonya's. Zhonya's didn't do anything. And then yeah, the rest of it's really good. Flash for Kai'Sa. Teemo's really good into Kai'Sa. I noticed this deck played like 5 board cards for Kai'Sa, which I'm not a fan of. I don't like sideboarding in over half of my tournament or over half of my sideboard for a matchup if that matchup is the most popular deck in the room or most popular deck at the tournament. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like if I'm sideboarding in that many cards, that I should probably just be playing more cards in the main board for that matchup, or I better be destroying every matchup that isn't that one in game 1 to give me a really good excuse to be bringing in 5 cards. So what I ended up doing was, again, putting the 2 Teemos in the main over the Clockwork. So now I only bring in the 3 cards, and that makes it really easy because you just take out the 2 scrap heaps with the 1 charm, and there's your 3 cards. Or you take out like the 2 scrap heaps and like maybe the 1, I like the Gust, I don't know, 2 scrap heaps and 1 other card somewhere to fit in the sideboard. Maybe you just don't even bring in Windwall, probably do. But yeah, it makes the boarding a lot easier. Same 2 Rebuke. A lot of these are 2-ofs because the idea is you just take out the 2 scrap heaps, bring in the 2 cards. Against Master Yi, like the big Master Yi that isn't playing 2-drops there on Aurora, you just bring in 2 Rebukes, 1 Adaptatron, you take out the Gust and the scrap heaps. Against Tempo, like Yi or whatever you want to call it, Ramp Yi, you just bring in the 2 Rebukes. You can bring in the Windwall if you want to, if you're afraid of them having something, or if you just want to have an uncounterable Defy, is really kind of the answer, but I don't do that. I just bring in the 2 Rebukes, call it a day, take out the 2 scrap heaps. Charm's really good because you can charm their smaller units into yours, get them off of the battlefield. Now you get to take over both. You also killed their unit without having to attack into it, which is really nice. You can contemplate bringing in flashes just because you want to be able to save yourself against a charm, save yourself against a dead bloom, anything like that. But I don't think it's really needed. I think you just bring in the 2 Rebukes, take out the 2 scrap heaps. But overall, the board is fine. So now we'll go over the newer version. This is the updated version that I actually had a chance to, I used my brain after playing those matches. I played a lot more after I scrimmed like another 15 games into Kai'Sa that evening to see how the deck does into Kai'Sa, specifically into game 1. Because I think if you can't beat Kai'Sa going second game 1 at least 50% of the time, then your deck isn't very viable in the meta. And the reason is because 50% of the time you'll be going second into Kai'Sa, and if that's just an auto lose, and then now you have to win a game on the draw with Kai'Sa going first and on their going first battlefield and post board, good luck. That sounds not fun to deal with. I just went ahead and played a lot, and it did go 50-50 in going second in game 1s. I won every game that I went first in game 1, and then again I went 50-50 in games I went second in game 1. And then game 1 battlefield was on Warrant. It felt good. The Dreaming Tree came in. I took out the, like I said, the Targon's Peak. The idea is, again, with Dreaming Tree, it helps you just have card draw while having boarded out your scrap heaps. So you have your scrap heaps in for game 1 against Zon. Sounds good. Game 2, you board out your scrap heaps. You bring in your, like, whatever sideboard cards. Maybe it's even more Gust. Maybe it's the flashes, most likely. And then you have flashes with Dreaming Tree in game 2, which, like, again, or whatever game you're going second into Kai'Sa, so that gives you more card draw, more card advantage, so you don't run out of cards. And then you have, this lets you play Windswept Hillock going first and not have that awkward third battlefield where you're like, I have to go first, but also I want to go first with Windswept Hillock. Outside of that, the only other changes I kind of went over already, the 3 Mask of Foresight are huge. I took out the Zhonya's in the main, the 1 Rebuke in the main. And that's how I fit in the 2 Mask of Foresights. I keep wanting to say Mask of Momentum. Basically just as good. That's how you fit in the 2 masks, because I took out the Rebuke and the Zhonya's, and then I fit in the Tasty by taking out a Charm. Tasty could very much just be like a White Flame. I think White Flame could go in the sideboard even, as if you need like a really big unit, let's say you're playing against like Master Yi specifically, then I could see you bringing in some White Flames and having like White Flame be good. And maybe you probably don't play White Flame over Raza, but you can play White Flame over like the Tasty, or you probably keep Tasty into defend, but you take out the 2 Scrap Heaps, you take out the Gust, that's 3 cards. Okay, cool. 2 Rebukes, 1 what's it called? 1 White Flame. There you go. If you want to play a second White Flame, like I'm thinking I'd probably take out the Wind Wall for a White Flame. It would be what I would do. Wind Wall is basically just for Kai'Sa and then any deck that played Stratagem. It's really for any deck that plays Time Warp and then any deck that plays Stratagem. It's also just good into Kai'Sa because it stops Falling Star. You do go negative on the trade, but you at least get to keep your, like, ideally, like your Yasuo alive or your Raza alive or whatever alive, which is really important. And then on top of that, it stops like Acacian Rain, which is a huge board wipe. It stops Falling Star if it needs to. Stops Time Warp, which is really big. Some people are playing Singularity again, which I actually think isn't bad. I think people forgot Singularity exists, so they'll get blown out by it a lot. That's exactly what happened to me. I thought I was very safe by having a Raza. Basically, I had Raza and Yasuo in play, and my opponent was going to exactly 7 runes. And the idea was if they have Acacian Rain, I can just on guard my Yasuo to keep it alive, and then they like didn't really have a board. The Yasuo was on the base anyway, so it wasn't like it was threatened. They didn't have enough runes to singular or to what is it called? Like stupefy it to make it die to anything. So I thought I was in a really good spot, and then they just like played a Singularity on me, killed my Raza. I still got to protect my Yasuo, but like it was a lot worse. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I still kept my Yasuo alive, but it was really bad. If I didn't have that 1 mana open, I would have been sad. Or if they shot something that was smaller, like I had I think I had a Wielder in play, or I had something else in play other than the Yasuo. If they would have just shot like a 6 mana and then the Wielder, like I would have been kind of sad because the Raza was on a battlefield, so they would have just attacked in, right? Or they could have Hex Tech raid it, which is actually what they ended up doing. They Hex Tech raid my Wielder of Water, but point being is it was like it was rough. It was very rough, but the oh, sorry, all that was just to say, like, Wind Wall is good against Kai'Sa, and then that's the only matchup I bring it into. If that's true, maybe I just bring in the White Flame Protector, because White Flame Protector would also be really good into Kai'Sa as well with like Ride the Wind, because having a 16 might unit with Ride the Wind is like absurd. That's something that they can't deal with on 12 runes exactly. If you make it all the way to 12 runes, you can play a White Flame Protector, buff itself for 16. You can move it up with Yasuo Legend ability, so you attack somewhere and then you just like ride the wind over, and that right there is exactly 12 runes. Obviously, if you just have another unit in play already that's a decent size, like if you have a Yasuo in play, for example, even if you just have like a Wielder of Water in play, or any unit really, but Wielder of Water comes in, that attacks for 12, and you attack for 12 in one place, and then you can like ride the wind over. Or if you have it and it's untapped, you just like attack in for 12, and then, or you attack in for 12, and then you ride the wind over for 12 on the other side. Or you can attack in for 12 and then Yasuo for 8 on the other side, because your protector's in the back. There's a lot of stuff you can do with the White Flame Protector, so I'm really liking that. I think it'll be here. If Windwall doesn't seem to impress me, what it is like I can just consistently play around the big removal spells, because I usually only have, like I said, 1 to 2 units in play at a time anyways, so they don't get good chances to play their big board wipes on me. But I like having the option of having the wind wall and being able to just play recklessly, have wind wall backup. Having that insurance always feels nice, right? So feels good. So that's probably the next advancement if I were to try, but that's the big question, is like, can this deck beat Kai'Sa at least slightly more consistently? If yes, then I think it'd be, a pretty solid deck to bring to Houston. It's a deck that I'm already looking at bringing into Houston, which is why I wanted to try it yesterday anyways. And my logic was like, if I can't beat my local Kai'Sa players, no flame to them. But I was like, if I can't, like, not necessarily win the whole skirmish, but if I can't just like do well enough at a skirmish to like top and then lose in the finals to a good Kai'Sa player or something, then it's definitely just not going to be worth trying to figure out for Houston, which is like 3 weeks away, if I'm not mistaken. 3.5 weeks away. But because it showed up really well, I'm going to scrim it a little bit more against my team today, and I'll keep it updated. I might do a guide on it. I'll wait to see if I take it to Houston and do a Metafy guide on it for there. and do like a super even more in-depth guide. It'll basically cover up like how to play each matchup, the sideboard guide for you to like print out and take to your tournaments with you. Of course, it's going to be like literally the last week of set 1 anyways, so that's also, I don't want to put in, I put in a lot of effort and a lot of work into my guides. Like, I'll show you guys my, where is my, I have Metafy up right here, actually. So my, the guides, like the Victor guide I just did, which needs to be moved up because it's like way down here. It's again a completely free Victor guide, and it's long. Like it has, you know, whatever this is, like 2,000 words or something. But the length doesn't matter. It's like how important the guide is. You know, it's like how you use the guide versus how big the guide is, and it has a lot of important information. So it's stuff like this. This takes a while. I'm not the best writer. I'm not the best, you know, reader. So it takes a while to do stuff like this, and I don't want to do this for like a deck that people aren't going to be playing in a week because set 2 comes out in a week, right? But all that to say, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Go check out my Metafy. I have coaching is now open again, so if you're interested in coaching to either prepare for this set 1 event for the last minute or get ready for set 2, do that. The best way to do that is going to be through my boot camp, as I think we have over 20 something people in my boot camp right now. There are, how do I check? I thought it was just under server setting. Oh yeah, here we go, 25 members. So there's 25 people in the boot camp. I'm sure the people are literally, they're scrimming in there right now. We go over all the decks, we do calls. We did like a 3-hour call last week. We did a 2-hour call this week. We, let me see, where's that? We go over everything. We refine decks together. We scrim in there together. Like I scrim in there with them. I watch. I help. You get 50% off of coaching, but also people just like get free coaching and get free deck like refinement and stuff, which is really nice. And so it makes it really easy to be able to prepare, especially when you have 20 people in a call asking the same questions, working on the same deck, all of that fun stuff, right? So it's super sick. I'd check that out if I were you, if you're really looking to level up your game and prepare for these regional qualifiers. There's a lot of results behind the players that were in my boot camps previously as well. I'm not going to take a bit of, more of your time though, so if you're interested in that, DM me on Discord. Go check it out on Metafy. Link to my Metafy will be down in the description below. And feel free to talk to anyone that was in or is currently in my boot camp, because yeah, people that subscribe to your Metafy have done really well, including the person that had the highest seed, #1 seed going into day 2 of Houston was a Metafy subscriber. Friends of one, Cases being Metafy subscriber, and multiple MF Aurora decks are Metafy subscribers that did well in Houston. I think half of the, I think half or just under that. There were 7 that made day 2, and 3 of them were on either my exact list or within like 2 cards basically after we talked about it, and they just preferred a couple different cards. So it works. I can help people if you have any questions. So free consultations, all that stuff. But that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video.